welcome to my channel. I'm Christina and today is Mystery Box Challenge Day. If you're not familiar with the Mystery Box Challenge, it was created by Courtney over at Creative on the Cheap. She gets a group of DIY YouTubers together and we all have to send each other a box of 10 items. And in that box, 2 of the items have to be a little bit tricky to craft with, and then there's also a twist every time, and then also a guest host. So our host this time around is Kristen from Kristen K, and then she got to pick the theme of the box and then all of the stipulations. The theme that she chose was spring. Since we are in spring, that's perfect. And then for the items that we had to send, she chose to have us send a flower pot, a gardening tool, something wood, a floral item, moss, yarn, and then 3 of the items could be sender's choice. One of those items was in the challenge item, so we got to pick that. And then for the second challenge item, it had to be a piece of clothing. For the twist, she said to use something from outdoors with 1 challenge item. So that sounds pretty good. I like all of the items that she had us send to each other. The box that I got sent to me is from Lisa Birmingham. And then this time around, I got to send my box to Kelly from Kelly Barlow Creations. Lisa's usually pretty nice, so I'm hoping she was nice to me this time. I'm really excited to see what's in my box, so let's go ahead and open it up. So I've opened up the box, and this is what it looks like right on top. It looks like she just put a card right on top here, and let's see what it says. It says, "Hey pretty lady, I'm so excited to see what you make with these mystery box items. I know you'll create something beautiful. Happy crafting. Love, Lisa." It was a super cute card. Okay, let me just flip it around here so I can see a little bit better. First thing I notice are these florals. This obviously is the floral item. These are so pretty, and it looks like she has everything labeled here, which is great. Oh no, the next thing I noticed, okay, so this one says flower pot, but it is broken. So that's unfortunate. Oh man, but I do have a lot of these little pots in my craft stash, so no worries there. I can go ahead and just use one from my stash since this one is broken. Also, if you guys hear any kind of background noise, today is garbage day, and of course they chose to go right down my street as I'm filming this. So hopefully it won't be too noisy, but if you hear something, that's what it is. Okay, the next thing I see here is Sender's Choice Challenge item. I'm gonna go ahead and take this out and set it aside. And then another one here says a piece of clothing, which I know is a challenge item, so I'm gonna set this one aside as well. Then we have some moss, and it looks like she did a combination of like Spanish moss and probably reindeer moss. So I've got some green and some brown moss in here. I love using moss, so that shouldn't be too hard. Also, it looks like she sent me some candy, some Twix. It says snack break. Thank you, Lisa. I love Twix. Next, we've got Sender's Choice, and she wrapped it up. Let's see. Oh, nice. Okay. We've got like a little mason jar, and it has a really pretty flower on the front of it. I love this. This is so cute. I've never seen one like that. And it's got a cute little design on the top too with a flower. So cute. Okay, and then we have, let's see here, this one says yarn. And it's this really like a beautiful blue color. Oh, I love this, especially for spring. So thanks, Lisa. So far, so good. This next one here is also a Sender's Choice item. Oh, this is so cute. I know I've said that a lot, but how adorable is this? I love this. Thank you. I I'm not going to want to do anything with this really, but this is so cute. I love it. On the bottom here, it says it's the wood item. And we just have some of the wood planks from Dollar Tree, which is always great to have. So I'm not too worried about these. And then of course we have the gardening tool. And she sent me the little gardening rake. I think this is from either Dollar General or Dollar Tree. If you can hear that, that's my son running around upstairs. He should be being quiet while I do this, but you'll probably be able to hear him. So I had gotten one of these. I can't remember who sent this to me. I think it was last spring, but I had a rake and I had a really hard time trying to figure out what to do with it. So here we go again. Now for the 2 challenge items. We'll do the piece of clothing first. Oh, I can see. It looks like they're socks. Let's see. And they're super cute socks. Look at this. We've got strawberries on the top and all over some of the socks. How cute. And there's 5 pairs. So I guess if I mess up on 1 pair, I'll have 4 more to go. So I actually had socks in the last mystery box challenge, but they were like the no-show socks. And those were kind of challenging to come up with something. So we'll see what I can come up with for these. Now on to the last item, which is the second challenge item in the box. And this is the Sender's Choice challenge item. Okay. This is adorable. This is like a little beehive and it is so cute. And it's like plastic too. So I don't know, maybe I could make it into something else, but I don't think I'll want to because this is adorable. I absolutely love everything in the box that you sent, Lisa. Thank you so much for being nice to me. I honestly think the hardest item is probably going to be the rake once again, but we'll have to see. Let's go ahead and get crafting. First up is DIY number 1. For this project, I'm going to be using the wood planks that Lisa sent in my box. And the first thing I'm going to be doing is just attaching 2 of the planks together using some hot glue. This is going to be the base for my piece and I needed it to be a little bit thicker. So once I have those attached, I'm then going to be using some more glue to attach 2 more of those planks on each side. I'm creating a box here, if you couldn't tell already. I'm then taking another one of those planks, just seeing where I need to cut, marking it off, and then I cut 2 of them off camera. I'm then attaching the 2 sides that are left over, but then I realized it looks pretty sloppy and I did not cut it very accurately. So I'm gonna just pull that apart, and to come up with a solution, I ended up taking these wooden dowels and just marking off where I need to cut them down. And then I'm going to be cutting 4 of them with my miter shears to go on all 4 sides. So once I have them cut down, I'm then going to be reattaching those wood pieces that I already cut. But to make my sides look cleaner in between where they meet together, I'm just going to be using those wood dowels. Now that I have my box created, I'm then going to be painting it with my castle colored chalk paint from Folk Art. And then I thought it would be really cute to add this wood applique from Hobby Lobby. And I'm going to be painting that with that same castle colored chalk paint. And then once the paint was dry, I went in with my Crackle medium and I'm just applying that to the entire box and then the entire applique. I let the Crackle medium completely dry before attaching the applique right in the front center of my box. I'm then using some white chalk paint and painting the entire box. And then you can see that once it's dry, it's really crackly and distressed, but I wanted to add some brown chalk paint just to make some of that crackle pop and that applique on the front. So once I have that added, I'm then going to be going and using 4 of these mini wooden snowmen from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be staining them with my Folk Art wood tint in the color Walnut. And then once I have them all stained, I'm just going to be using some hot glue to attach them on the bottom of all 4 sides of my box. Now I just needed to add some filler to my box, so I'm using some floral foam and just setting it down inside. And then I'm using some of that moss that Lisa sent, placing that right over top of the foam. And then I thought it would be really cute to add some of these succulents that I had in my craft stash. And this is what the box looks like all finished. I love how it looks. I think it is so cute. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this one. Next up is DIY number 2. For this project, I'm starting with a glass jar that I had in my craft stash. This is not the one that Lisa sent in my box. And I'm just going in with some white chalk paint and painting the entire jar. I did paint it in a few different coats, and the very last coat of paint, I just took my sponge brush and just dabbed the paint on to give my jar a little bit of texture. Once that was dry, I then added some of this red and white checked fabric from Hobby Lobby. I cut it down into a square to fit over the top of my jar. And then I used a ponytail holder to just kind of hold that into place until I could figure out exactly the spacing of the fabric. And then just added some jute twine around the very top and then tied that off. And then I just removed that hair tie. So then I'm going to be using the sock that Lisa sent. I'm using the 2 white socks that have the strawberries embroidered on the very top. And I'm like, okay, what can I do with this? So I ended up just going through and cutting the sock away from the embroidered strawberry as close as I possibly could. There was a lot of little white threads that were still there. So what I ended up doing was taking a lighter and very carefully singeing away the white threads. Now, I was a little worried, okay, am I gonna burn this completely? But it ended up working out great. And then once it was all done, I had these 2 cute little strawberries to add to my project. Next, I'm going to be creating a really simple double bow out of some jute twine, and then I'm going to be attaching that in the very top of my jar. Then I went over to Etsy, found these cute little strawberry labels. I'll try to have them linked down below, and I printed them out on some sticker paper and then attached that little sticker onto a piece of brown cardstock. I'm then just going to be cutting it out and then attaching it using some hot glue on the very front of my jar. And then this is where I'm going to be adding some details. I took 2 little wooden buttons and glued those right in the center of my bow, and then I'm going to be adding one of my strawberries at the top left corner of my label on the front, and then one on the bottom right. This is the jar all finished. I think it is absolutely adorable, and I had so much fun creating it. I want to know what you guys think of this one. Next up, we have DIY number 3. For this project, I'm going to be using this bird stamp from Dollar Tree, and it just came in one of those packs with a bunch of different little stampers on it. You can see I'm just going to be cutting the plastic around the silicone bird stamp away. I want to get as close as I possibly can to the bird. And then once I have it cut out, I'm going to be hot gluing that with the flat side of the stamp onto a terracotta pot. This is one that Lisa had sent in the box and was broken, but I'm going to be using one from my stash. So after I have it glued on, I then realized I could have just peeled away that plastic part from the silicone bird stamp and not had to have even cut it out. So just keep that in mind. So once I have the plastic peeled away from the bird, I went back through and hot glued the silicone bird to the front of my pot. I'm then going to use a white chalk paint, and I painted over the bird and the entire pot. I'm then going to be creating a textured paint using some of this salt wash. I ended up adding too much of the powder, but whatever, it is what it is. So I added the powder and then my white chalk paint, just mixed that up to give me a nice textured paint. And then I just painted that onto my pot and over top of my bird just to give me a really nice textured look. And where there was any like little gaps where the bird met the pot, I made sure to put a lot of that texture in those spaces. So once that completely dried, I then went in with some sandpaper and just kind of sanded down any of those peaks that were really sharp. Then once I was done doing that, I used some dark chalk paint on a stencil brush and just distressed the entire pot so I could make it look really like old and make that bird really pop. I'm then using some of that Spanish moss that Lisa sent inside of my pot, and then I ended up adding some succulents that I had from my craft stash. And this is what it looks like all finished. I really love how this turned out, and I'm probably going to end up using this technique some more and using some of those stampers for more projects like this. Next up is DIY number 4. For this project, I'm going to be using this sign that I had in my craft stash, as well as this Welcome Spring stencil that I also had. I'm just getting the stencil on my wood piece, centering it, and then using some tape to hold it down. For the stencil, I'm only going to be using the words Welcome Spring, and I'm just applying some white chalk paint. After the paint was dry, I then removed the stencil. I'm then going to be using these red flowers that Lisa sent in my box. I pulled one of the flowers off, and then I'm just going to be taking it apart. I thought the petals kind of looked like butterfly wings, so I'm going to be taking the 2 largest petals from the flower, and then I'm just stacking them from smallest to largest. And then I'm going to be using some jute twine to wrap around the center of those petals several times. And then I did end up using a little bit of hot glue along the way just to hold things in place. I'm then just creating a little knot at the top there to kind of give me the silhouette of a butterfly body. And then I ended up just cutting that jute twine, but leaving 2 longer pieces to look like antennas. I'm then using some hot glue to attach my butterfly to the top right-hand side of my sign. And then all I needed to do now was create a hanger, and I wanted it to be a little bit colorful. So I'm using some red and white checked ribbon along with some white rope, and I just attached the rope to the center of the ribbon. And then I'm going to be just attaching my hanger on the back of my sign using some staples. And this is the sign all finished. I kept it really simple with this one. I love the pop of color on the hanger, and I love the way the butterfly looks. I would love to know, do you think my flower petals look like a butterfly? Moving right along into DIY number 5. For this one, I'm just using some candlesticks that I had at my house, and then I'm using 2 of the plastic tubes that Lisa sent me in my box. I'm using some hot glue and just simply attaching the tubes inside of the candlesticks. This project is super easy, could not get easier. So once I have the tubes attached, I'm then just taking some dried flowers that I had from my craft stash and just placing them inside of the tubes. And this is what it looks like all finished. The dried flowers that I used are from Hobby Lobby, and I just think it is so beautiful and such an easy project. Moving into DIY number 6 for this project, this is where I'm going to be using the rake that Lisa sent. And again, this was probably the most challenging item just because last time I had it, I had no idea what to do with it. And this time I still had no idea. So I just kind of stared at it for a while, tried to bend it, wasn't budging. So I ended up just sawing off the top off camera and then just looked at each piece. I'm like, okay, this one kind of looks like a cow nose. I don't know. But what I ended up doing was taking it back to the saw, sawing another piece of it off, and then I'm just going to end up using one of the 3 rake prongs. So that's the piece I'm going to be using. I'm then going to be using this glass jar that Lisa sent in my box. I removed the lid because I'm not going to be using it, and then I'm painting the entire jar with some white chalk paint. Once the paint was dry, I added some antique gold rub and buff onto a paintbrush, and I'm just very lightly going over all of the flower details that are on the front of the jar just to make those pop. And then whatever was left over on my brush, I just very lightly painted that over the rest of the entire jar. In this project, I'm also going to be using one of these wooden shelves from Dollar Tree, and I'm using my folk art wood tint in the color walnut to stain all of the wood. And then I used hot glue to attach that metal piece on the top of my sign, but don't worry, I'm not just using hot glue. So I had that attached just to kind of see where I wanted it to hang. And then I took one of these little finial top pieces from Hobby Lobby, and I'm also just using some of that antique gold rub and buff on it, and then hot gluing it to the end of my metal piece so that it wasn't, sharp, and I had a little detail added to it. Here you can see I'm adding some E6000 and some hot glue to my piece, and then placing it back onto the center top portion of my wood. I'm then going in with some of this striped ribbon. I cut 2 pieces of it, and I'm just going to be attaching those over the holes that were on the top and bottom of my wood piece, and I'm just securing the ends of the ribbon along the back side. Now I'm going to be taking some jute and wrapping it around the top of my jar several times, and then just making the 2 sides where the jute is going to hang around my hanger. I'm just making sure that those are placed and stay in place on the sides of my jar. So I used some hot glue to do that, and then once those side pieces were attached, I then wrapped more jute to hold them into place, and then I created a really cute little bow at the very front of my jar. And then now I'm just going to be hanging that jute on my hanger. I just made sure I knotted it to the length that I wanted it to be, cut away those excess pieces of jute, and then I'm adding some flowers from Hobby Lobby, and then I also am going to be adding some of that moss that Lisa sent. I did end up adding a hanger on the back of this piece so I could hang it on a wall, and I think it turned out pretty good. I want to know what you guys think of this one. Next is DIY number 7. For this project, I'm going to be using this really pretty blue yarn that Lisa sent me. I'm taking the yarn and wrapping it around my pointer and middle finger several times. I'm going to be creating a flower. Next, I'm just taking the yarn off of my fingers, taking a piece of jewelry wire, and then just placing that inside of the loops. I'm then twisting that wire around the yarn and then all the way down. The long pieces of the wire that I'm twisting together are going to be the stem of my flower. I'm then using my scissors to cut the loops of all of the yarn, and then I did end up cutting the yarn down even shorter because I didn't want my flower to be that long. Next, I'm using some of this green floral tape, and I started at the bottom of my wires, and then I just wrapped the tape around the wire all the way up to the flower, and then I did wrap that tape around the bottom base of my flower as well. I then took my macrame comb and just brushed out that yarn, and then once it was brushed out, I needed to cut down the yarn even more. So here I'm doing that. I did make 4 of these flowers and then also 2 white ones with just little puff balls on them. I wrapped all of the wires together to form like a little bouquet. And then here I'm taking some jute twine and I'm wrapping it around all of the flowers just to hold them together a little bit better and make it look more put together. So once I have that done, I wanted to create a little double bow, and here I'm doing that. I'm then going to be attaching the bow right on the front of where I have all of my jute, and then I'm going to be using a cute little button on the front of the bow just for some added detail. Next, I'm going to be using this, I believe it's a 5x7 wood frame from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just taking out that little paper backing, and then I'm staining the entire frame with my walnut wood tint. I grabbed a frame backing from my stash that I just had left over, along with some of this like canvas fabric from Hobby Lobby, and I'm cutting it down so that the fabric will fit onto that frame backing. And then as you can see here, I'm just taking it around to the back side and securing it down with some hot glue. I'm then going to be attaching that backing with the fabric onto the back of my stained 5x7 frame. I had these wooden little banner letters in my craft stash, and I thought it would be really cute at the top of this sign. So I'm spelling out the word spring, and I'm just tying each one of these onto a piece of jute twine. And then I'm using some hot glue to attach that at the very top of my frame. I'm then using some more glue to attach my little bouquet that I have here inside of the bottom of my frame. And then to add some more detail, I'm using some more of this jute ribbon. I did it around all three sides that were left over, the top and then both sides, and then more detail pieces. I'm adding two cute little jute bows at the top on the left and right hand side. This is what the picture looks like all finished. It's not my favorite from today, but I still think it turned out really cute. Now for the 8th and final DIY today, it's where I incorporate the Sender's Choice Challenge item, and it is this plastic beehive that Lisa sent in my box. I first wanted to create a hole in the very front of it. So here I just took a pen and I'm just roughly drawing where I want my hole to kind of guide me. I then went in with this heat tool and burned away the plastic to create my hole. I will say this is not the best idea. You should probably not do this because even though it worked, breathing in the burning plastic was probably not the best idea, so I do not recommend doing this, even though it worked. So after I have my hole made, I'm then gonna start wrapping my entire beehive with some of this rope. To attach the rope, I just used hot glue, and I'm just basically doing the entire beehive. When I would get to the areas where I have the cut hole, I would just cut the rope and then wrap that piece around and then start a new piece until the hole was done. And then I would just wrap again. So once I have it completely wrapped, the front, I wanted to add like another piece of rope as like circled around just to kind of give it more of a finished look. And that is what I'm doing here. I then cut another piece of rope, and I'm going to be attaching that at the very top of my beehive to create a little hanger. And then this is where I'm going to add some detail pieces. I have these little wooden bees. I believe they're from Hobby Lobby, but they may be from Dollar Tree. And I just started attaching them to the front of my beehive. And then I remembered that I had these little like honey, I don't know, spoon things, and I am just going to be painting the top of it with some yellow paint, and then I stained the bottom of it and then used some of this black and white buffalo check ribbon, tying it around the base and then just creating a really cute bow. And I attached that piece on the left-hand side of my beehive. Next, I wanted to create a bow to go on the top, and I remembered I had this yellow and white striped ribbon, but it was a little bit thick, so I'm just cutting it down the center to make a smaller, thinner piece. I then made a really simple bow, and then I'm just cutting the ends of the bow into a dovetail. I'm then using some more of that black and white checked ribbon, creating a second bow, and then I'm just placing the two together and using some jute twine to attach the 2 bows, and then I'm attaching those bows at the very top of my beehive. I then wanted to add a little bit more detail, so I added 2 wooden buttons to the center of my bows, and then I found these really cute little sunflowers, and I'm just going to be attaching those to the front of the hive as well. Now, this is where I remembered that I forgot to do the twist. So it was to have something from outside, which you can see. I found a dead bee on my deck, and I was supposed to incorporate that in with a challenge item. So I am taking this bee from my deck, and I am going to be attaching it to the front of my hive. This is absolutely ridiculous. The bee was already dead, I promise you, but I didn't want to fail. I wanted to have the twist done, and technically I'm doing it. Please do not come after me. I could not think of anything else. I ended up taking some of these sticks from outside too and just randomly attaching them onto the beehive, but this is what it looks like all finished. I think it's really cute. I will be taking off the bee. Don't worry. Please don't come after me in the comments. I know this is ridiculous, but hey, I met the requirements, did I not? Anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, I hope that you will consider subscribing. And please hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. And I will have a link down to the playlist in my description box. Thank you so much for watching.